All right, guys, we're going to start into the regular residential FAR/BAR contract. This is not an as-is. It's a totally different contract and fills a different need. So as we're doing this, what we're going to do is ask you guys first, if you're training on contracts, please go back and watch the as-is contract first, because we did that one first when we were doing these series, and then do this one because it explains a lot about the empty blanks up here being buyers, sellers, property addresses, descriptions. What's being left on the property is also very similar, and contributory, and anything that you're putting in here. It also explains the way these deposits are done, escrow agents. So we're going to buzz through, including financing, right? Okay, so all of these things are going to be very similar. So look at that one first and then come to this one, because it's even talking about, closing dates, time periods, occupancy, premises, things like this. And even we talked about if it's got a lease, assignability, financing. All of these things were covered in the last contract, which will make this one easier. But the huge difference is going to be in inspections. Okay, so as we roll into right here, this section is tremendous, and it's a huge advantage to a seller on a new home, because a buyer can't just walk away based on their sole discretion. And personally, I think it's a huge advantage to a buyer when they are working with an older home that they're getting into, or a home that they know needs to have repairs done. If you leave these things blank, it immediately kicks to 1.5% of the purchase price. Okay, this is all amounts and percentages of the purchase price. So these are huge if we look at them this way. And so a lot of sellers will balk initially, because if this home is really a mess, they're signing to the fact that we agree to 4.5% of the purchase price to make this thing happen. Guess what? If they know the home's a mess, they're going to sign off on this thing. Why? Because you're going to explain it really well to them. You're going to explain the fact that, hey, it needs more than this in work. You've already told me that it does. And if we're looking at that, then we go down to, well, let me cover what these cover. General repair items. These are general repair items, so it limits that. And it can be a roof. So that could be a tremendous amount here. Could be an AC system. Could be windows in the whole house are trashed. Whatever it may be, it's covered with this. Wood destroying organisms. WDO, a lot of people think that this is simply termites. No, this protects mold, everything else that could be in a house. If somebody knows the house has termites and they've got trusses that are damaged, why wouldn't they just sign off on this thing? Even if they've had it treated and the termites are gone, but the damage still remains. Okay. How about if they know they didn't permit anything on the house that they did, and they're going, hey, even though the as is again also covers and says clearly that the seller will work to clear any permits and any unpermitted work to get the closing accomplished, but it's only those things that would affect a closing. Mm-hmm. So when we roll into this section, now this gets a little more in depth, because it's obtaining required building permits for any existing improvement, which a permit was not obtained. How much clearer can it be? If somebody did improvements that requires that, guess what? They're saying we'll pay 1.5% of the purchase price to cover that, which might just cover having an engineer come out after the fact and do a as-is inspection on the property, or I think it's just called an after-the-fact inspection. I can't remember the term for it, but an engineer can come in and give an approval that the work was done properly and do an inspection. So, they're engineers. I believe Kimes Engineering still does it over here. They stopped. They were really good at it. But anyway, so we need engineers that do that, and that'll help. There you go. Thank you, Leah. So look at our app files. Of course, approved vendors list, it helps. But these are, even for me, of course, because they change. So just because I'm the one leading this doesn't mean I know everything, guys. I've just been doing it a long time. So if prior to closing, seller is unable to meet these maintenance requirements, guess what? Immediately puts 125% of the estimated repair costs. So guess what else we have to do? We have to get those estimates. We have to help them get the estimates. It's not our job to get the estimates, but whose job is it if it's not ours? We need extreme ownership in this area. We need to get those things because they get 125% of those estimated costs held in escrow. When the work's done, it's paid out to them, and if there's remainders, then the seller will come out. Sellers shall pay amount of actual cost, but not in excess of a general repair amount. This does limit their amounts. So again, in my opinion, this helps the buyer and the seller in a home that things weren't done properly on to do this contract.
You mean like the one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the only thought is that this legally binds the buyer
Mm-hmm.
way tighter
Yes, it does.
to the house.
Absolutely.
And so,
But only during that inspection period.
well, not for cash.
Still during the inspection period.
What do you mean?
During the inspection period on an as-is contract, they can walk away based on their sole discretion.
Correct.
Inspection period only.
Right.
This is inspections were done. This was already determined. This is the amount that they predetermined that they would spend on it and do it. So yes, if the amounts go above that, can they walk away? Let's read.
Cause that's kind of the kicker is if they're putting $35,000 in an escrow and then the seller starts hiring cheap people or something like that,
Have to be licensed.
Okay, but what if they're licensed in his pocket?
I don't know how to explain that one. That would be a question for an attorney. And I know the question. I know where you're at.
Yeah.
But it would be a question for an attorney.
Yeah, because that's not I thought about this one for it, for this rules, but I was like, yeah, but now you're bound even heavier. Like it may not be what you're.
Yeah, so right here, I mean, this clearly says if actual costs of maintenance requirement or required repairs, replacements, treatment, or permitting exceed the applicable escrow amounts, seller shall pay such actual amounts of costs, but not in excess of applicable general repair, WDO repair, and permit limits set above. Any unused portion of escrowed amounts shall be refunded to the seller. So this is what it is, but it ties everybody up more. So again, if we're concerned that there are things that are going to go horribly above this, number one, why would we use an as-is contract for something that we know is going to be out of whack on that unless we negotiate a actual repair limit already or repair cost? Because as a seller, I'm going to look at that and go, fine, do your inspections. We can both walk away during that time period if you don't take it. And if you don't take it, I've got more buyers that are going to want it for a little bit less money, but they're going to take it. It's all depends. All these situations depend. When beautiful work is done unpermitted, I think that permit amount should cover it. But before you sign a, I don't know if it's all executed, and it's cash ties you up.
Could you technically put it in additional terms that seller is willing to do 1% towards permitting? Well,
this says 1.5%.
I know, well, what I mean is in and as is. Like take that line, the cost associated closing out, open, expired permits, obtaining required building permits, like take that line, throw it into an additional terms on an as is, and say that a seller, if they sign, a seller agrees to.
Why not? It takes precedence over anything else on the contract.
Because then, that's an option that, hey guys, okay, you offer X, but we get seller to do Y, and then
It's all negotiable.
Right.
Contracts
yeah.
are negotiable. Purchase offers are negotiable. Before I put that in a contract, I would reach out to one of our attorneys and say, hey, what's the best way to phrase this? Is it great, or is it okay if I just copy this section of the FAR contract and put it in the as-is contract? But now, if you're gonna do that, you're doing that because then the buyer can still walk away during the inspection period?
That's the big
Yeah.
thing, because they're willing to pay for all repairs. They literally said, we're willing to pay for it all, we're even willing to overlook if they would sign the contract 1.6. It's listed at, 1.89 right now,
Mhm.
and he moved the whole $50,000, the seller did. And so he won't budge. And so it's been 14 days. I sent another offer yesterday, and same thing, won't budge.
Okay, well, then ask them about that portion.
Yeah.
Say, hey, if you won't budge on that, would you be willing to have a 1.5% or whatever amount that may be?
Because that's one thing, I have no
Mhm.
idea cost on
Right.
those things.
Yeah,
So,
well, and it's tough to know a true cost on that, because he's done a lot of work on the house, right? All right, so hopefully that helps with that. And again, there are times where attorneys have to be called and get their opinions, and I would definitely do that. I would call our legal hotline for realtors, and I wouldn't just accept that because they're always disclaiming that, hey, this is just for you and it's just my opinion. Yeah, then call one of the attorneys we work with on a routine basis for
yeah,
closings,
most of
right?
the time I talk to Ann over.
Uh-huh.
anyway.
There you go. But I like multiple opinions when it's something like this. So anyhow, the nice part about it is if they don't do that, then they hold 125% of it. Okay?
But then that's just held. It's just held.
It's
an
held
escrow?
in an escrow account. When the work's done, it's paid out of that escrow account and the remainder goes back to the seller. Okay,
Even
it's
after closing?
absolutely.
So it's in reality, they would still have to fix everything, even if they're closed in it, then you're dealing with the seller and some money that's just hanging out.
Mhm. Absolutely. That's why it's there. And typically, again, this is being used when you have contractors' estimates in hand that are probably already executed. Or, however it's done, that you know what those amounts are. I would want to know those amounts before I ever executed anything.
Yeah.
What you may need to do, if it's an as-is contract, is we need an extension on the inspection period because we're getting pricing on having permits completed on this property, the required building permits that were skipped. And at that point, they may go, yeah, never mind, we're going to go with somebody else.
Mhm.
Because if you close it and buy it, you own it.
Mhm.
And, it's one of those things. Okay. Does that answer that? To a degree. I know it's
To a
not,
degree.
I know it's not super clear, but you and I have talked about that quite a bit. So I really think that the nice thing about this contract is that it does tie the buyers and sellers both into the property tighter. It's harder to walk away from. Let's face it, from a perspective of realtors, our work is going to be rewarded. That's nice too, right? And we work hard. It stinks to work for nothing. So then again, we just get down into everything from what's paid by the buyer, what's paid by the seller up above, title evidence, closing agents. That's the same as an as-is contract. Back to the home warranties. Guys, if you're doing the above things and there's issues, get a home warranty and ask the seller to pay for it. Okay? Oftentimes, if a seller sees the number they want on that front page, these terms, they'll be like, yeah, all right, we can do that.
Mhm.
All right. But get solid numbers on those things as well. But don't just skip over this home warranty section because there's definitely times where this is hugely important and protects your buyers and sellers. All right. So if a seller knows there's problems with the house and is willing to, hopefully he's disclosed them, number one. If there's things that he's not aware of, it's still nice if he's going, man, I was wondering, but I don't know. Buy the buyer a home warranty because it's good faith. And I also think that it protects them to a large degree, from being sued down the road for non-disclosure. Special assessments, excuse me. It's the same as the as is, which typically, again, seller pay prior to closing, buyer after closing. These are all the same as the other contract. I have to go through and I should go through and highlight the differences in these two. The inspection period, this is where, you know, we need to, again, be sure that these things are done properly and that we get our repairs, and then read this whole section, right? Because each one of these sections ties back to the first portion of that 1.5% on each, which again, that's tremendous. Let's just look at what's that even look like. Let's pull out a calculator real quick and say, hey, you know, we have how much is that house, Joey?
1.9. They're trying to get it for 1.6.
Yeah, I would say probably won't. Times
15K each. So
how about
40, 50
28
each?
each, 28.5
So it's pushing $100,000 in repairs
if needed.
if needed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But on a home that size and that price point, it's not uncommon at all for a buyer to come in and go, yeah, I know you'd like 2 million, but I think it's worth $1.8 million, and that's what we'll pay. Let me know. That's reasonable. If you've got a $300,000 home and somebody comes in and says, I really think it's only worth 200,
Right. Doesn't
it's
work
like,
that way.
no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah, the higher dollar up, the
Right.
more negotiation you can like play with. for sure.
typically,
Yeah.
and or the more hard nosed some people can get.
Yeah.
So it depends.
No.
All right.
Him and I both. I'm fine with that.
Right. So again, it's important to look at this section though, and know that, that from the effective date, you need to get these things done and line them up immediately. All these things are at the buyer's expense, not allowed to destroy things. But if buyer fails to timely deliver to seller written notice or report required, then except for buyers or sellers continuing with regular maintenance, they've waived their right. This is the part that I don't think is really clear in the as-is contract. I'm going to go back and lay these side by side and read them again myself as well, because I do think it's important that we compare the differences and see what those differences truly are. What I do know for sure is that this ties the buyer and seller both to the contract more. And, you know, we don't want to get somebody, let me back up to, we don't want to get a buyer stuck in a home that needs $1 million worth of repair, because it used to be an old dump site. And actually there was a gas station there and one of the tanks is still on the property and nobody knew it. And we just found it, and
Sounds like you're right on it. You dealt with it.
things happen. Yeah, things happen. Yeah. Yeah. Especially on vacant land, that happens. And sometimes people even have to strip off 2 foot of the soil and remove it and have it dealt with professionally, and have that dirt then, or have dirt then added back to the property to bring it back to level. And it's cost prohibitive. Yeah, you just, that buyer actually kept it and he's just like, I don't know what to do with it. I'll just keep it. No, he's asked the county. He's trying to get it all condemned. But anyway, these things happen like in St. Petersburg. But anyway, general inspections, these things are important. Property conditions. We need to have these things all gone through quickly. And we're not talking cosmetic conditions, you know the difference on that. If you don't, hopefully your home inspector does. As a home inspector, I used to make it clear that cosmetic is beauty items. Working condition is a separate issue. So in other words, if an air conditioner looks terrible and is rusty and is functioning properly, it's functioning as intended. Only thing an inspector can add is that it's at the extent of its lifetime. And then it can be negotiated, okay? But just because it's at the extent of its lifetime doesn't mean that it needs to be replaced if it's functioning properly. Would that not be time for it to be important to have that warranty in place? Yeah, for sure. So, you know, It's just interesting because cosmetic, pitted marasite.
Yeah, it's really, there's.
Isn't
actually
that
some-
interesting?
There's some really.
Tears, worn
It
spot,
has
yeah.
cracked roof tiles.
Uh-huh, because that's typical. Up to 10% can be cracked or loose on a tile roof, right? And that'll still pass code.
What is MRSA?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's the inside finish of a pool.
Yeah.
Ah.
So you have the gunite and then you have the marcite or pebble tack or whatever they finish it with.
What?
That.
Okay, but no, it's okay. I hear you. But pitted means when you look at it, it can look like Swiss cheese down there. And yet it is still cosmetic. So if it's cosmetic and you know it needs to be done before you ever write on this home, wouldn't you put it in additional terms that pool to be remarcited at the seller's expense? You can expand on this. Just because this is the way it's phrased doesn't mean that's that, okay? And a seller, knowing some of these things are going to be done anyway, if they think that that's probably all there is to it, they may say, yeah, we'll do that, but then we want only, 0.5 as far as the repair amount over here, that I'm also on the hook for, that anything else they might find. Okay. Yeah, that might be very reasonable.
Right, because, yeah, that could be a 10 grand.
All right, or
there.
like me, right, or like me, I'd say, what are they afraid of
Oh, yeah.
as the buyer's agent? And if I was presenting it to my seller, I'd be like, are you afraid they're gonna find something else that I'm not aware of? Otherwise, why would we care? Okay, a lot of times they don't, they just simply want to win a negotiation somewhere. As a buyer's agent, you need to present things to a seller in a format where they can say, we're doing this, we're not doing that. You've got to include things that are cosmetic and repair requests sometimes, because they're gonna go, we're not doing that, it's cosmetic. And you go, "Ah, you're right, let me explain that to the buyer."
Let me fix
Yeah, I'll explain it to the buyer.
it. Because again, it's the winning.
Right, the buyer, right, the buyer really wanted that, but okay, so it's the negotiation
And
of
then they
a
get the
win.
yes on that, and they don't care
Mhm.
about doing it.
Right, where they care, but they're going, well, they did what they should have done, okay. It's a win. So, these are important to consider, though. What about, these things, just read them, guys, there's tons of them, right? It's not gonna include wallpaper, window treatments, nail holes, scrapes, scratches, dents, chips, caulking and ceilings, walls, floors, tiles, furniture, fixtures, it just cracked roof tiles, curling or worn shingles or limited roof tile, should not be considered defects. How about that one? But sure, curling shingles on a asphalt roof says that it's at the extent of its life. Worn shingles, typically saying it's at the extent of its life. If those things are on there, and you think the house needs a roof, or the seller says home needs a roof, you better write in additional terms who's paying for that roof. Don't just skip over that and go okie dokie. So that's where it's really important that we read these contracts. How about sellers only obligated to make such general repairs as are necessary to bring the items into condition specified, in other words, functioning. Above, seller within 10 days after receipt of buyer's items they've got to respond, right? Okay, and we need them to execute and sign these things, that they're willing to do these things. It's not just we gave you the reports, now you had to do them. So no, these are actually the requests. We still need to submit a request, right? So let's make sure, and with that request, I always include all the reports. I'm not trying to hide anything from anybody. It's, hey, we're just here to represent and make sure that things are handled properly. So what if cost to repair general repair items equals or is less than the general repair limit, seller shall have repairs made in accordance, boom. If cost to repair general repair items exceeds the general repair limit, then within 5 days after a party's receipt of the last estimate, the seller may elect to pay the excess by, this is the nice part. The seller can say, no, you're still in because I'm going to pay the difference. Seller shall or may elect to pay the excess by delivering written notice to buyer. Or buyer may deliver written notice to the seller, designating which repairs of the general repair items seller shall make at a total cost to seller not exceeding the general repair limit, and agreeing to the accepted balance. So you're still in a negotiation, right? Okay, so it can exceed that amount, but if it does, you've got to negotiate it.
That's so interesting because,
But-
yeah,
But the thing is, you can't just walk away.
Right, as,
If
and
if
as
the-
is, you just
Right.
throw the paper.
And,
walk
and a
away.
seller goes, whoa, wait a minute, even as an as is, it's frustrating because it's like, wait, they'll do that.
Mhm.
It's too late. They withdrew and they're going on to another home. And you're going, okay, let me go back to marketing this home.
The last sentence down there, though, it says if neither party delivers such written notice to the other, then neither party may terminate his contract. And then buyer should be refunded the deposit.
Yeah, thereby releasing buyer and seller from further obligations.
So now you're in
If neither
negotiations.
party delivers such notice to the other, then either party may terminate this contract and buyer shall be refunded the deposit thereby. In other words, if the amount is above.
Right.
Right?
So if the amount's above the repair,
And neither party
And you're in
admits that they're
negotiations.
going to do anything,
If you're not above, then there's no.
There's no
negotiation.
question.
You're in contract. It's
providing that you have submitted,
things are
yes.
now being
The
repaired.
request is there and you guys are working with the selling agent to get estimates. A lot of selling agents go, that's your job. It's like, would you please help me get this done? It's important for your
People are
seller
getting paid.
too.
People are getting paid.
Well,
People are
and,
getting paid.
you're protecting your seller. Do you want me to go to just the most expensive contractors in
They'll
town,
do
or are
it.
you gonna help? Are you gonna help me get this done in the most cost-effective method possible? Let's do this. Let's work as a team. And some will, some won't. People are still people, okay? And it goes down through the same thing with wood destroying organisms, which, and here's the fun part, because again, people think it's just termites. It is anything from arthropod to a plant life, termites, powder post beetles, old house borers, those things can do a ton of damage, a wood boring bee, and wood decaying fungi, so mold that damages or infests seasoned wood in a structure, excluding fences. Yeah, it's always seasoned wood. It's not, otherwise it was never treated, right? And then repairs, how it's handled. Same thing again, right? If it exceeds, what do you do with it? And that's the way it's handled.
So each one of them have, all right, general repairs, this is how you have to handle this.
Hmm.
WDO, this is how you have to handle this, and then. obviously-
Yep.
well, they're handled the same way. They're just in separate.
Right,
Yeah.
but technically, do you have to submit different repair requests for each one, or would that be in one big repair request?
I would do
list?
one big repair request,
Okay.
so that it can't ever be misconstrued that they only got the one.
Mhm.
And we didn't get that email. We missed that one. I don't know, never got it.
Mhm.
When did you send it? We never got it. It has to be executed either way.
Right, still has to be signed by both
Yes.
parties. and then-
So if you package it, it's easier oftentimes for people to swallow than if you send little bit, little bit, little bit.
So I guess one confusing part for me about this one is inspection period on the normal FAR bar. Does not mean as much, obviously, as is. The as is that period's more of the you can walk away, you can dip, like get your
Mhm.
inspections, you can walk away, right? While on. the-
Oh, you can also just say, I drove up to the house and decided I don't like the paint color. I'm out.
Been there, yeah, right,
It drives me nuts. It's
Yeah.
like, these are things that
I
were
know.
obvious. You saw them before you ever went into
Yeah.
contract.
yeah.
What do you
Always
mean
think
you wrote
we
another
should-
contract on another house with another agent too?
that's
And you're
right,
going after that house?
Right.
Oh my
So,
gosh, right.
This, for an example, what's the big importance of the inspection period then on this guy? Because technically that inspection period on as is more. You can do whatever the heck you want and yeah.
Right.
What's the,
On this one, they're not going to, well, they may try and tighten you up, but you just say no, because we need the appropriate time period to not only get inspections done, but also then get estimates on repairs that need to be done, which is a big difference in the amount of time required.
Yeah.
And if you want us to tighten it up to that, we're just not willing to do it.
So at this one, you really do need that 15-day inspection period.
Mhm.
so I guess that's where I'm kind of confused on.
Yeah.
You still can't back out even during that inspection period. So
Right.
what's the importance of an inspection period on this normal?
Because you have to do your requests within that time period,
That's what I was wondering.
okay?
Yeah.
It has to be
And
agreed
then-
to.
Mhm.
Really, the only way that this would blow up is if the repairs
Exceed.
blow that out of the water,
Mhm.
exceed those estimates.
But then you
or-
can still negotiate it.
Yeah,
Nobody agrees.
or if
If,
financing.
if,
fails.
se-
Right.
well, oh, so what if a
Mhm.
seller just says, no, I'm unwilling to do those repairs? I'm
Buyer
unwilling
gets
to do
their
those things."
money back and they're out.
Okay. Okay, so it's still like, if seller says nah, but, but a buyer is more bound than a seller.
Well, Joey, look
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
If
that's
either
right.
party delivers such written notice to the other, then either party may terminate this contract and buyers shall be refunded the deposit, thereby releasing the buyer and seller from further obligations.
I missed that little bit, written notice of what?
I think written notice.
Oh,
repair.
of being unwilling to do those additional repairs that are above that amount.
Okay.
Well, let me back up. If cost to close, open or expired, or in building permits now,
Mhm.
expired building permits, or to remedy any permit violation of any governmental entity exceeds the permit limit, that's the repair limit, right? Then within 5 days after a party's receipt of estimates of cost to remedy, a seller may elect to pay the expense by delivering a written notice. A, or B, buyer may deliver written notice to the seller, accepting the condition as is. And that's okay too.
Which would be.
But you guys, you need to, if you use this contract, it's a great contract. I love it. You have to go through and highlight those items that are required to be done at what time period. Same thing with as is, it's just important that we know the process and then that we spell it out to the buyer.
Mhm.
If we've got the buyer, that we spell it out to the seller. If we've got the seller,
Mhm.
here's what we're looking for,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Including, loan approval dates and time periods and,
Yeah.
and when those conditions are lifted. Typically, as is, it's a 21 day, which is still, you go, oh gosh, so great. We have a 4-week closing period, so they have to be approved a week ahead of time. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And boy, does a seller get mad when they've moved everything out of a house and sold everything and they're ready to move and found the next home they're moving to. And a week before closing, it's not happening.
Mhm.
It's ugly.
Yeah.
I hate that phone call. Oh my gosh, been there too.
It's like-
So I let people know ahead of time that expectation management's everything in what we do, right? So I let them know this could happen. You need to know this could happen. And then they're like, well, what do we do? Not do anything until a week before? It's like, that's up to you. Personally, I wouldn't be selling everything. Instead, I'd be lining up a mover. But you guys do what you got to do. All right, so rolling on again, this now talks to escrow agents again, how money can be released. This survives closing. This paragraph survives closing. How about that line? Or termination of this contract. Okay. Failure of funds to become collected shall not excuse buyer's performance. Huh. So the buyer doesn't send in the escrow check.
Doesn't mean that they can break contract or seller can, well, seller. can break.
Seller can sue them.
Yeah.
How about, in my opinion, seller can sue them. How about, we didn't watch that our buyer didn't put in their escrow deposit. Who's negligent?
We are.
We technically are negligent in this. We need to make sure that we're watching for that and checking that box. There's a reason why we have the buyers and sellers checklists and the things that we do in our app files, the things that we do, these processes. Hugely important, guys. If that escrow is not in and it's 2 weeks in, or let's say it was due in 3 days and the inspection period's up in 10 days, and the buyer backs out on the 11th day, and the seller goes, fine, I'll keep the escrow. And you go, well, they never made one.
Mhm.
Everybody gets sued. Or could.
Yeah, they could. I've had
Mhm.
people, yeah, I've had some very similar in that where, I don't remember, yeah, it was the buyer, but we had like a 2-day inspection, but technically the escrow was a 3-day. And so they did the inspection and never put their money in and
Yeah.
then like dipped on day 3 or whatever it was. And I was
And
like,
now that's okay.
that's interesting.
If it was due on day 3 and they dipped on day 3, they're fine.
Yeah.
According to
But the
my
inspection
understanding.
period was like,
Yeah,
was
that's
2.
interesting.
So like, yeah.
Oh,
2-day inspection.
It was an interesting, I remember, I don't know if it was one of
then how'd they dip on day 3? They just said, screw it, sue me?
the, Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Like, it was
Do
like,
I
it was.
hear you?
It was either
Wow.
like, it was either, and again, it was like a $2,000, as it wasn't even like
Oh.
a crazy, yeah.
It's not worth
escrow.
suing over.
Yeah, and so it was one of those,
That's
like,
ugly.
things were moving really quick, and it
Mhm.
was like, oh, we'll do 2 days, but the inspector got there on day 2.
Mhm.
Inspection report technically got to them on day 3, they saw the stuff, they went, nah, and dipped, it was like, well.
Yeah,
never
A
even
2-day
considered.
inspection period is nuts
Yeah.
because you don't give yourself a time period to seek remedy.
Right,
And to get so you would have to get an extension.
for the inspection period, but in reality, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, at that
You'd
point,
have
it
to.
was during the craziness. I
yeah,
don't
and
remember
and
what
you're
it
not gonna
was,
win
but,
that one.
yeah.
So again, should people
That's
seek
fair.
professional advice? Of course they should.
Use that.
Anytime they want an attorney, they should have one. How about buyer agrees to rely solely on seller, professional inspectors, and governmental agencies for verification of property condition, square footage, and other material, things that materially affect the property.
Should send that to the last agent.
Well, right, but you know what I send over to include with contracts typically is the county tax record. Because it has it on there. And you know, if we've selected ahead of time that, you know, this stuff was chosen or the square footage was based upon the property appraiser, yeah, sure they can be. It happens all the time. So what's really nice though is if you've got the builder's prints, they don't lie.
Well, yeah, and even that can be wrong, like
Can
the
be.
townhouse I just sold, the county only had it as a 2-2 or a 3-2 or something like that,
Mhm.
and like 1,200 square foot. The townhouse was like 1,600 square foot.
Makes a big
4-2,
price
like all
difference.
these things.
Yeah,
and
that's a mess.
Yeah. it was-
Well,
it's-
a lot of
it's because
times-
Lennar stopped building townhouses and
Yeah.
upgraded theirs.
And the county probably didn't go in the property. They walked around the outside of the property as is typical. And let's face it, we should probably not put this on a recording, but if someone from the county comes and knocks on your door and says they are with the county property appraiser's office, may they come in?
No.
No, I don't think so. Nice
Okay.
to see you though. I hope you have a
Good to
great
see
day.
you.
Need a water while you're walking
Yeah,
around the
yeah.
outside?
See you, bud.
Yeah, you can walk the outside, but no. Because most likely they're going to, if they see beautiful upgrades, you may see an increase in your taxes. You don't have to let these people in. Anyway, this then talks about defaults, buyer and seller. Yes,
You do have to let them in if it's Manatee County bond. Or anything to do with Manatee County financing.
well, that's different.
Okay. I
That-
just wanted
That's financing.
further-
Now, I'm not talking about a property appraisal being done for the sale of a home. If you don't allow them in the home, you're not gonna get the sale done.
Yeah, you're not gonna
Yeah.
get that.
No, I'm talking about from the property appraiser's office,
Oh,
the
great.
county.
The county,
Okay.
just like
Totally,
Lennar.
totally different beast.
Yep.
So yeah, no, you, yeah. If a property has to be appraised, if it's financed, they need to get in the property.
No.
Right. And how about this? One I learned recently, I really thought that having an addendum for an appraisal when somebody's already financing the property anyway and it has to be appraised, I thought it was redundant.
Mm.
And so when I had a buyer say, no, I really want that on there, it made me go, why? It's really redundant. You've already got it in financing. And knowing that it was a sharp individual, generated the question in my head, do I have this correct 100%?
Mm.
So I started calling the attorneys and come to find out, no, it's a much broader sweep
Hmm.
with the appraisal. And that goes beyond your inspection period, that the
Hmm.
buyer can walk away if they want to based on that appraisal.
Wow.
See, I thought the appraisal was in the financing law.
It is.
Hmm.
It is. But again, if somebody wants a secondary out,
Oh, well, but
There
technically,
it
is that
is.
still in the out of your lending?
no,
technically?
no, not a broad sweep.
Oh, saying
It's
if
much-
it doesn't appraise.
This is much broader, which I didn't understand the broadness of it.
Hmm.
When, you know, I don't read like an attorney does,
Right,
even though I
right,
do
right.
more and more with the more contracts we
Right.
read. So that's important. So anyway, that's where we can get into disputes and these things, attorneys' fees, if there are problems, how are they handled? This is typically the same, I believe, contract to contract. Time's always of the essence. I got to double check that calendar days are based upon where the property is located, shall be used in computing time periods. I need to make sure and compare the two contracts on time periods. That, you know, that they do go through, like this portion where it's, there's an automatic extension here. Any time periods provided for dates specified in the contract, whether pre-printed or handwritten. Why would they say that? Typewritten or inserted herein, right? Shall end, or occur on a Sunday, a Saturday, Sunday, national legal public holiday defined in section 5, or a day which is national legal public holiday is observed because it fell on a Saturday or Sunday, shall extend to the next calendar day, which is not a Saturday or Sunday. These are important things to remember. And that's where I need to look at the as-is contract, and we all should, to verify our time periods on our contracts, spell them out again on an email to the other agent as well. Some get aggravated going, I know time periods. It's like, okay, I'm just verifying that we're all on the same
Yeah,
page.
The only one I get a little thrown off on with those particularly is inspection days. Because technically inspection days still are counted Saturday and Sunday,
Mhm.
but with lending, it does not count as Saturday and Sunday. Like if you're lending or closing, if you put your closing date on a Saturday, it's just gonna automatically.
They can't
close
do
on
it.
Monday.
Yeah.
Right? And so it just, you don't even have to write an addendum. It's just-
Mhm.
But it still would be wise to, but.
Right, but
you
it's an
still-
automatic.
but Inspection, if it ends on
Yeah.
a Saturday, ends on a Saturday. And so like understanding that stuff was probably one of the most difficult things in the beginning of like,
Right.
okay, so inspection counts.
Yeah.
Lending.
Same thing with understanding force majeure. So, you know, if there's a hurricane in the box, somebody can't get insurance. They didn't get their insurance ahead of time. Shame on everybody involved for not tracking that. As an agent, and we know a storm's coming, why on earth wouldn't we get that, or make sure that that buyer gets the insurance bound ahead of time so they can still get the home they want?
Right.
They're trying to move in ahead of a storm. They got to get in, get a roof over their heads. Nope.
Particularly a hurricane. Like,
You're
it's
right.
not a
Nope,
sudden,
sorry, you're
"Oh,
sitting.
here."
Right.
Yeah.
Nope, sorry, you're sitting in your truck and your cars during the storm because I can't get you in the house.
Have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, let us know how you do. Yeah, we're just not gonna do that to people, right? So it's just important. We need to make sure that we put in the appropriate addenda, have it checked on the back here. If there's other, you know, I don't even think this has a home sale contingency in this, if I recall.
No,
right.
most of them don't.
Right. So we want to write that in
And
here.
also the self-disclosure in there every
Mhm.
time.
The other thing, if you think somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes, you Google somebody, or look in the county records and you find where they own another home in the area. You ask, do they own another home in the area? Nope. Okay. You add an additional terms right here that, there is no home sale contingency with the buyer, for this contract,
Oh, for,
and protect yourself.
oh, if.
The best
if
you
you're
can.
the listing agent.
Mhm.
And you discover and they're like,
Yep.
oh yeah, no, they've been renting and like
Right.
something like that.
Mhm. Nope, it's gonna be all cash. Oftentimes, that's just not true. And,
So
so,
if you throw it in there, there's gonna be an instant, oh yeah, actually, I did discover.
right,
You know, yeah.
especially if, you know,
I didn't think about that.
buyer's escrow, is, I don't know, we'd have to talk to an attorney about proper phrasing of it, but it's gonna be something to the effect of, buyer's escrow, is hard after inspection period, and, there is no home sale contingency that would affect financing in this contract, period.
Which in reality, I don't think you need to say that it goes hard because the inspection period, at least on an as is you won't. Because if they click the cash,
Yep,
they click the cash,
Right.
it waives everything else.
yep,
Yeah.
I'd still
Well,
phrase
I
it
mean, if
anyway.
there's Cash, if they had a home sale contingency, they would still need to show proof of funds.
Right.
Yeah,
Well-
well, they
So
don't, well, they
kinda-
don't have to show anything.
Maybe,
That's,
that's
was-
up,
Not have
that's
to.
up,
No,
up to
I've
a
had
seller.
buyers- Yeah, I've literally had a seller that never asked for proof of funds.
Mhm.
I was like,
I got
"Came in
that
close,"
too.
But it was,
Well, I've got that on one now, and my seller was like, "No, I think they're good for it." That old guy shook my hand, and I trust him. I said,
Alright.
"Perfect."
yeah, it was
As
like
it
the
should
one
be.
down in Punta Gorda for me. It was an investor that was buying a house.
Okay.
That was crazy.
Hold that, guys. This is the conclusion of a regular FAR bar as is contract. Please go back and read this entire thing. It may make you go cross-eyed, so keep a highlighter in your hand, print it. Don't just read it online, print it, use a highlighter. Don't just highlight things online. Again, there's so much to be said about having a hard copy in your hand when you're reviewing contracts. Please review this carefully so you know the difference in the caveats and what could keep you from getting in legal turmoil as well. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being here.